I pulled the trigger on the man I loved, and then I told him I was carrying his child. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that 6 months ago, I was Special Agent Sarah Chin, and I was good at my job. Cold. Calculated. The kind of agent who could lie to a suspect's face without my pulse rising a single beat. The kind who'd spent 4 years undercover in places most people only see in nightmares. The kind who won commendations for maintaining cover under pressure. I'd never broken character. Not once. Until him. I'd infiltrated the Castellano crime family as a financial consultant, and my mission was simple: get close to Dante Castellano, gather evidence, bring down his empire. The FBI had been trying to nail the Castellanos for 15 years. 15 years of failed operations, dead witnesses, and agents who came back empty-handed or didn't come back at all. This was my chance to be the one who finally brought them down. My legacy case. I had 3 rules drilled into me from day one at Quantico. 3 rules that had kept me alive, kept me sane, kept me focused through every dangerous assignment I'd ever worked. Don't get attached. Don't break cover. Don't fall in love. I broke all 3. And the terrible, beautiful truth? If I could go back to that October night, knowing everything that would happen, every consequence, every betrayal, every moment of agony that was coming, I'd do it again. I'd break those rules all over again. Because some people are worth burning your whole world down for. It started on a Tuesday night in October. The kind of night where autumn had teeth, cold air that bit through your jacket and made the city feel sharper, more dangerous, more alive. I was sitting in Dante's downtown office on the 40th floor, all floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering cityscape and dark leather furniture that probably cost more than my actual annual salary, pretending to review his shipping manifests while wearing a wire that felt like it was burning straight through my skin. Every breath I took was being recorded. Every word monitored. Every movement catalogued. My handler, Marco Rivera, was 3 blocks away in a surveillance van, probably hunched over his equipment drinking terrible coffee and eating cold Chinese food while he listened to me work. Waiting for me to get Dante to slip up. To say something incriminating. To give us the evidence we needed. Professional. Detached. Clinical. That's what I needed to be. But my hands were shaking as I stared at the same column of numbers I'd been pretending to analyze for the past 20 minutes. Dante stood by the window with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid-fire Italian to someone named Marco, his cousin Marco, not my Marco. His second in command. The enforcer. I'd memorized the entire Castellano family tree during my preparation. Studied their patterns, their relationships, their weaknesses. Knew which ones were truly dangerous and which ones just played the part. Dante Castellano was the most dangerous of them all. Not because he was violent, though he could be, when necessary. Not because he was cruel, though he'd ordered things that kept me awake at night. But because he was smart. Careful. He didn't make mistakes. Didn't trust easily. Didn't let anyone get close. Until me, apparently. The city lights behind him created a silhouette that looked like something out of a film noir. Sharp suit. Broad shoulders. Dark hair that he kept running his fingers through while he argued with his cousin in Italian. Untouchable. Dangerous. Magnetic. The kind of man mothers warn their daughters about. The kind of man I was supposed to destroy. I forced my eyes back down to the manifest in front of me, trying to focus. Container shipments from Genoa. Port schedules in Newark. Customs documentation that all looked perfectly legitimate on the surface. But I knew better. I'd been trained to see patterns. Somewhere buried in these numbers was evidence of weapons trafficking, money laundering, connections to cartels in Mexico and crime families in Eastern Europe. Things that would put Dante Castellano away for the rest of his life. I just had to find it. Had to stay focused. Had to remember why I was here. But then his voice cut through the silence. You can stop pretending to work, he said suddenly, hanging up the phone. His voice was low, almost amused, with that slight accent that made everything he said sound more intimate than it should. My heart stopped. Actually stopped beating for what felt like 3 full seconds. For one terrible moment, I thought he knew. Thought somehow he'd figured out I was FBI. That the wire had been discovered. That this was it, the moment everything went catastrophically, violently wrong. I'd been trained for this scenario. Had protocols. Panic words. Emergency extraction procedures. But my mind went completely blank. Excuse me? I kept my voice steady. Slightly confused. Just the right amount of professional puzzlement. Years of training kicking in even through the panic. He turned slowly, deliberately, and those dark eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made the air leave my lungs. Not angry. Not suspicious. Just knowing. Seeing too much. You've been staring at the same page for 20 minutes, Sarah. The way he said my name made something inside me twist painfully. Like he was tasting it. Rolling it around in his mouth. Learning the shape and weight of it. I'd been Sarah Chin, financial consultant, for 3 months now. I'd answered to that name thousands of times. Signed it on documents. Introduced myself at meetings. But when Dante said it, it sounded different. Real. Like he was saying my actual name and not just my cover identity. I forced a professional smile and clasped my hands together on the desk, a nervous tell I'd been trying to break since my academy days. My instructors had pointed it out. Said it made me look uncertain. Weak. That suspects could read it. Dante could definitely read it. Just being thorough, I said, gesturing to the spreadsheet like it was fascinating instead of mind-numbing. These shipping routes are complex, and I want to make sure I understand the. They're boring, he interrupted, moving away from the window. Each step he took toward me felt deliberate. Predatory. I know they're boring. That's exactly why I pay you very good money to look at them instead of doing it myself. He was closer now. Close enough that I could make out the faint scar above his left eyebrow, a thin white line that I'd wondered about more times than I should have. Close enough to smell his cologne, something expensive that made me think of cedar and leather and whiskey and late nights and 1,000 things I had no business thinking about. Close enough that the wire felt like a brand against my ribs. Or maybe you're distracted, he continued, tilting his head slightly as he studied me. Like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. A code he was determined to break. You do that a lot, you know. Drift away. Go somewhere else in your head. Where do you go, Sarah? Somewhere you can never follow, I thought. Somewhere that's not this elaborate lie I'm living. Somewhere I don't have to pretend I don't notice how you look at me. How I look at you. Nowhere interesting, I said aloud. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It never did when he was really paying attention. I don't believe you. I don't think you do anything that isn't interesting. My pulse quickened. This was dangerous territory. Too personal. Too close to real. Mr. Castellano. Dante, he corrected softly, almost gently. How many times do I have to tell you? We've been working together for 3 months now. I think we're past formalities, don't you? 3 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days, my brain supplied automatically. Not that I was counting. Not that every single interaction with this man was logged in my nightly reports, analyzed for leverage, dissected for exploitable weaknesses. Not that I'd started looking forward to these late-night sessions in his office more than any assignment I'd ever worked. Dante, I repeated, and hated how natural it felt on my tongue. How right. I'm just focused on the work. That's all. That's all? He leaned against the desk now, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Close enough that the wire felt like it was screaming against my skin. See, I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot going on in that brilliant head of yours. Things you're not telling me. Everything, I thought desperately. I'm not telling you everything. Not my real name. Not my real job. Not that every word we're speaking right now is being recorded by federal agents who want to see you in prison for the rest of your natural life. Like what? I tried to sound amused. Lightly curious. Definitely not terrified. Like why you always look sad when you think no one's watching. His voice dropped lower. More intimate. Like why you never mention family. Never talk about friends. Never tell me anything real about yourself. Like why someone as brilliant as you, and you are brilliant, Sarah, don't look surprised, is working for someone like me. Someone like you. A criminal. A mob boss. A man whose organization was responsible for at least 6 murders that we knew about and probably dozens we didn't. A man whose empire was built on violence and fear and blood money. A man I was supposed to hate. But I didn't hate him. That was the problem. That was the catastrophic, career-ending, possibly life-ending problem. I needed the job, I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Sarah Chin needed this job. Needed to be here. Needed access to his files and his office and his trust. Needed him. Everyone needs a job, Dante countered. Not everyone takes one that pays extremely well without asking a single question about where the money comes from. About what I really do. About why a financial consultant needs to work such late hours. You're not naive, Sarah. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met. So why did you really take this job? Because the FBI needed someone on the inside. Because I was good at becoming whoever I needed to be. Because this was supposed to be the case that made my career. Not the case that destroyed it. Would you have hired me if I'd asked questions? I met his gaze. Held it. A slow, genuine smile spread across his face. The kind that transformed him from dangerous to devastating. Probably not. I appreciate smart people, Sarah. But I don't appreciate nosy people. There's a difference. Then I guess I'm exactly what you're looking for. Are you? The question hung in the air between us, weighted with layers of meaning I didn't want to examine. Because lately, I'm not entirely sure what you are. My hands clasped tighter together. Warning sign. Tell. But I couldn't stop them. I'm your financial consultant. That's what I am. Right. He didn't sound even remotely convinced. And that's all you want to be? Just my employee? What kind of question was that? What was I supposed to say? That some nights I lay awake thinking about him? That I'd started memorizing the way he drank his coffee? That I'd caught myself smiling at his dry humor during meetings? That I was compromising everything I'd worked for, every value I held, because he made me feel something I'd never felt before? No. I absolutely could not say any of that. I want to do my job well, I said carefully, each word measured. That's what I want. He watched me for a long, heavy moment. Then he reached past me, close, so dangerously close I could feel the heat of his body, and picked up the manifest I'd been pretending to study. His arm brushed against mine. Just a whisper of contact. Probably accidental. It felt like lightning. You know what I think, he said softly, his voice doing something dangerous to my equilibrium. What? I think you're running from something. Or someone. I think that's why you're here, in my world, pretending you don't see what I really am. My breath caught in my throat. And what are you? His eyes met mine. Held. Dangerous. For you especially. Every alarm bell in my head was screaming. Abort. Extract. Run. I can handle danger. Can you? He set the manifest down but didn't move away. Still too close. Still making it hard to think. Because you're trembling, Sarah. I was. My hands, my breathing, everything. The wire against my ribs felt like a live wire. The office is cold. Liar. The word was almost tender. Almost affectionate. You know what I think? I think you feel it too. This thing between us. Whatever it is. I think it terrifies you as much as it terrifies me. This was it. The moment where I should shut it down. Where I should redirect, deflect, retreat behind professional boundaries. Where I should remember that he was the target and I was the weapon aimed directly at his heart. Where I should remember that I was Agent Chin, not Sarah. But when he looked at me like that, like I was the only real thing in his entire world of shadows and lies and carefully constructed facades, I forgot how to be anyone but myself. There's nothing between us, I said, and it was the worst lie I'd ever told. The least convincing. The most transparent. Now who doesn't believe who? He smiled. Actually smiled. Genuine and warm and heartbreaking. Go home, Sarah. It's late. We'll finish this tomorrow. I stood on shaking legs. Gathered my bag with trembling hands. Tried desperately to look normal. Professional. Completely unaffected by whatever had just happened. Whatever was still happening. Sarah, he called when I reached the door. I turned, knowing it was a mistake. Knowing I should just leave. Yes. Whatever you're running from, he said quietly, those dark eyes seeing straight through me, I hope you know you're safe here. With me. Whatever it is, you're safe. Safe. With a mob boss. With a man who had blood on his hands and bodies in his wake and a federal task force dedicated to bringing him down. With a man I was actively betraying with every breath I took. I should have laughed. Should have recognized it as manipulation. Should have seen it for what it was, a powerful man making an employee feel valued, seen, comfortable. But that was the moment. The exact moment I should have requested extraction. Should have walked out of that office and called Marco and said I was compromised and needed immediate removal. Because when Dante Castellano looked at me like he could see straight through every lie I'd ever told, straight through every mask I'd ever worn, straight through Agent Chin to whoever Sarah really was underneath, I felt something I'd never felt before in my entire carefully controlled life. Seen. Known. Wanted. Not as Agent Chin with her credentials and her mission and her 3 unbreakable rules. Not as Sarah Chin, the fictional financial consultant with the fabricated background and the perfect cover story. Just as me. Whoever that even was anymore. And God help me, God forgive me, God witness what I was about to do, I wanted him too. I wanted him in a way that had nothing to do with the job. In a way that made my chest physically ache. In a way that was making my carefully constructed walls crumble like they were made of sand instead of steel. In a way that was going to destroy both of us. Thank you, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Good night, Dante. I left his office and walked to my car through the cold October rain. Sat in the driver's seat for 10 full minutes before I could trust myself to drive. The wire was still recording everything. Marco was still listening to every word, every breath, every damning silence. And somewhere in the back of my mind, underneath all the training and protocols and professional distance, a voice was screaming that I was in too deep. That I was drowning. That I needed to save myself while I still could. But I didn't want to be saved. I was already drowning, and I didn't want anyone to throw me a lifeline. The weeks bled together after that. Every meeting became an exercise in restraint, a test of willpower I failed a little more each day. He'd brush past me in the hallway, and my skin would ignite where his shoulder had touched mine, the heat spreading like wildfire through my veins. The scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated, cedar and citrus, would linger in the air long after he'd gone, and I'd stand there like an idiot, breathing it in, memorizing it. He'd lean over my shoulder to look at my computer screen, ostensibly checking some financial report or transaction record, and I'd forget how to breathe. My fingers would freeze on the keyboard. The heat of his body behind mine, the whisper of his breath against my neck, it was torture. Professional, controlled torture. "This discrepancy here," he'd say, his voice low and smooth, pointing at the screen. His arm would brush against mine. Casual. Deliberate. I could never tell which. "I'll fix it," I'd manage, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know you will. You're thorough, Sarah." I appreciate that. The way he said my name, my cover name, made something in my chest tighten painfully. Once, during a late-night session reviewing accounts in his office, his hand covered mine on the mouse. The touch was warm, firm, and absolutely electric. My breath caught audibly in the quiet room. "You're trembling," he whispered, not moving his hand. "I'm cold." The lie was automatic, transparent. Liar. But his hand stayed there, warm and steady, for 3 heartbeats too long. Long enough for me to feel his pulse through his palm. Long enough for me to wonder if he could feel mine racing beneath his touch. Then he withdrew, slowly, his fingers trailing across my knuckles as he did. I couldn't meet his eyes. Couldn't let him see whatever was written on my face. My handler, Agent Marco Rivera, was getting suspicious. He'd been my mentor since I joined the bureau 6 years ago, had trained me himself in undercover work. He could read me better than anyone. "You're too close," he said during a dead-drop exchange in a coffee shop bathroom, his voice tight with concern and barely contained anger. We were standing by the sinks, the sound of a dripping faucet punctuating his words. "You're compromised, Chin." "I'm doing my job." I checked my reflection in the mirror, adjusting my hair, trying to look casual. Trying to ignore the guilt churning in my stomach. "Your job isn't to look at him like that." My hands stilled. Like what? Like he's not a criminal. Like he's not responsible for 6 murders we know about and probably dozens we don't. Marco's reflection appeared behind mine, his face hard. "Chin, he's a monster. He orders hits like normal people order coffee. He's destroyed families. Ended lives. And you're looking at him like..." "I know what he is," I cut him off, my voice sharper than intended. "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've forgotten. But monsters don't hold doors open for elderly women." I'd seen Dante do it just yesterday, helping Mrs. Chin from the 4th floor with her groceries, conversing with her in flawless Mandarin about her grandson's college applications. Monsters don't have a niece they call every Sunday without fail, their voice softening when they ask about her soccer games and school projects. Monsters don't look at you like you're the only real thing in their world of shadows and lies, like you're a lifeline they didn't know they needed. I was drowning in contradictions, and I didn't want to be saved. Everything changed the night of his brother Alejandro's engagement party. I wore a black dress that I'd bought specifically because I knew Dante would notice, something I'd never done before, choosing clothes to please a target. The dress was simple but fitted perfectly, elegant without being obvious. I hated myself for it. Hated the anticipation that fluttered in my stomach as I applied lipstick in my apartment mirror. Hated how my hands shook slightly as I fastened the delicate silver necklace at my throat. When I arrived at the Castellano estate in the hills above the city, the house was ablaze with lights, full of dangerous men in expensive suits who talked in hushed voices about things I was supposed to be recording. Women who knew not to ask questions moved through the crowd in designer dresses and practiced smiles. It was a gathering of predators pretending to be civilized, and I was right in the middle of it. The wire itched against my skin beneath the dress. A constant reminder of who I really was. Dante found me on the terrace, away from the crowd and the carefully orchestrated celebration. The October air was sharp and clean, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine from the gardens below. I was watching the city lights blur below us, a sea of illumination stretching to the horizon, and trying to remember why I'd joined the FBI in the first place. What I was supposed to be fighting for. "You're hiding," he said, appearing beside me like smoke, silent despite his size. He moved like a dancer, like someone who'd learned early that survival sometimes meant being invisible. "I'm breathing," I said without looking at him. "From what?" "You," I thought. "This. Everything. The way you make me forget who I am." "The noise," I said aloud. He was quiet for a moment, and I could feel him studying my profile. Then, "Do I scare you, Sarah?" The question caught me off guard. There was something vulnerable in it, something almost boyish despite the dangerous edge to his voice. I should have said yes. Should have played the nervous civilian, maintained my cover, kept the distance that was supposed to keep me safe. Instead, I turned to him and answered with the only truth I had left. "Terrify me." Something flickered in his dark eyes, surprise, recognition, maybe relief. "Good." His hand came up slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. Fingers brushed my jaw so gently I almost broke. Almost told him everything right there. "You should be scared. Because I think about you constantly, Sarah. I think about you when I should be thinking about business. When I should be thinking about supply chains and territories and all the things that keep this organization running. You're a distraction I can't afford." My heart hammered against my ribs. The wire felt like a brand against my skin. "Then stop," I whispered, but there was no conviction in it. "Can't." His thumb traced my lower lip, and I shivered despite the warmth of his touch. "Believe me, I've tried. I've tried to stay away from you. Tried to be professional. Tried to convince myself you're just another employee. But every time I see you, every time you walk into a room," he stopped, his jaw tightening. "You've gotten under my skin, and I don't know what to do about it." When he kissed me, the world tilted on its axis. His hands were in my hair, gentle but insistent, and mine were clutching his jacket like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to earth. I was kissing him back like I was starving, like I hadn't been alone my entire adult life by choice, by necessity. Like I wasn't wearing a wire that was recording every breath, every whispered word, every piece of evidence that would send him to prison for life and destroy everything I'd worked for in the process. The kiss was everything I'd imagined and nothing like I'd expected. Soft and demanding at once, tasting of whiskey and want. I pulled away, gasping, my thoughts a chaotic mess. "Dante, I don't." His forehead pressed against mine, his breath warm on my face. His hands cupped my face with surprising gentleness. "Don't say whatever you're about to say. Not tonight. Please. Just let me have this. Just tonight." The plea in his voice nearly undid me. But I had to tell him something, anything, because that kiss changed everything, and I didn't know how to be two people anymore. I didn't know how to be Agent Chin when Sarah, the woman I'd created, the woman who was somehow becoming more real than my actual self, wanted to stay in his arms forever. The affair that followed was wildfire. Consuming. Inevitable. We couldn't stay away from each other no matter how hard we tried, and God, we tried at first. Secret meetings in his penthouse, the city spread out below us like a carpet of stars. Stolen hours in hotel rooms where I'd turn off my phone and pretend the FBI didn't exist, pretend there wasn't a case file growing thicker by the day, pretend I wasn't building a prison around the man I was falling for. He'd trace the curve of my spine with reverent fingers and tell me things he shouldn't, about his father's death when he was 19, about the weight of the family legacy that had been thrust upon him before he was ready, about how exhausted he was from pretending to be heartless when he felt too much, always too much. "I'm not a good man," he said one night, lying beside me in the dark of his bedroom, moonlight painting silver stripes across his bare chest. "I know." And I did. I knew exactly how not good he was. I had the evidence. The photographs. The testimony. Then why are you here? He turned to look at me, and in the darkness, I could almost pretend his eyes weren't haunted. Because you make me feel alive. Because when I'm with you, I'm not Agent Chin or the girl who grew up in foster care with something to prove, who joined the FBI to make a difference and ended up here, tangled in sheets with a criminal. I'm just me. Just Sarah. I don't know, I whispered instead, the coward's answer. He kissed my shoulder, soft and lingering. Liar. He was right. I was lying. I was always lying now. 3 months in, Marco confronted me in a parking garage, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, casting everything in harsh, unforgiving light. His face was tight with controlled fury. You're sleeping with him. Not a question. An accusation. A condemnation. I didn't deny it. Couldn't summon the energy for another lie. The parking garage felt like a confessional, cold and echoing. Jesus Christ, Sarah. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was someone he'd never met before. The disappointment in his voice was worse than anger. Do you know what you've done? Everything you've gathered is inadmissible now. 3 years of work, hundreds of hours of surveillance, all the testimony, it's all compromised. The whole operation is compromised because you couldn't keep it in your pants. I started, desperate, grasping. You can't do anything. You're off the case. Extraction is in 48 hours. We're pulling you out before this gets any worse. No. The word came out sharp, panicked. Desperate. I grabbed his arm. Please, Marco. Give me more time. I can fix this. I can make it right. He pulled away from me like my touch burned. There's nothing to fix. You fell in love with a criminal, and now it's over. It's all over. But it wasn't over. As I stood there in that parking garage, watching Marco walk away from me, I realized with terrible clarity that it wasn't over at all. It was just beginning. That night, I went to Dante's penthouse unannounced. My hands shook as I pressed the buzzer, and I had to press it twice because the first time my finger slipped. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending to my own execution, each floor number lighting up like a countdown to the end of everything. He opened the door in a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, looking surprised and concerned. His hair was slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it while working. Sarah? What's wrong? Everything. Nothing. I didn't know anymore. The words tangled in my throat, impossible to voice. Can I stay here tonight? He didn't hesitate, didn't ask questions. Always. He pulled me inside, and I let him hold me while I silently fell apart. His arms wrapped around me like a shelter, like safety, like home. I pressed my face against his chest and tried not to think about the fact that I had 2 days left with him. 2 days before I disappeared from his life forever like smoke, like I'd never existed at all. 2 days before he learned that everything between us, every touch, every whispered confession, every moment of vulnerability, was built on lies. I should have told him the truth then. Should have given him that much, at least. Should have respected him enough to be honest about who I really was. Instead, I memorized the way his heartbeat sounded against my ear, steady, strong, real. I counted each beat like they were precious moments I could store away for the empty years ahead. The next morning, I woke up nauseous. Violently, inexplicably nauseous. The room tilted and spun, and I barely made it to the bathroom before my stomach rebelled. Dante was there instantly, appearing in the doorway still half asleep, worry etched across his features. He held my hair back while I threw up, murmuring soft reassurances in Italian that I only half understood. Then he carried me back to bed like I was something precious, something fragile that might shatter if handled too roughly. You're calling in sick, he decided, tucking the blankets around me with careful hands. I'm fine. The lie was automatic even though I felt like death warmed over. You're not. I'm getting my doctor. Panic shot through me. Dante, no. But he was already on the phone, his voice firm and brooking no argument. Dr. Petrov? It's Dante Castellano. I need you at my penthouse within the hour. No, not me. Someone important. Someone important. The words made my heart clench painfully. And 3 hours later, after Dr. Petrov, the Castellano family physician who'd probably treated everything from gunshot wounds to heart attacks with the discretion of someone who'd seen too much and said too little, examined me in Dante's guest room, I learned 3 words that shattered my entire world. You're pregnant, Miss Chin. About 6 weeks, I'd estimate. Congratulations. The room spun. The doctor's face blurred. Somewhere far away, I heard him talking about prenatal vitamins and scheduling a proper appointment, but the words were just noise. White static in my ears. Pregnant. With Dante Castellano's child. With the baby of the man I was supposed to betray in less than 24 hours. The man whose life I was about to destroy. The man who would become a father and never even know it. After the doctor left with another round of quiet congratulations and instructions I didn't process, Dante sat on the edge of the bed, holding my hand like it was made of glass. Like I might disappear if he gripped too tight. Sarah. Look at me. I couldn't. If I looked at him, if I saw the hope and wonder and fear in his eyes, I'd break completely. I'd tell him everything, and then both our lives would implode in different ways. This changes nothing between us, he said quietly, each word careful and deliberate. Unless you want it to. Whatever you decide, whatever you need, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. If you want this baby, we'll figure it out together. If you don't, I'll support you in that too. I just need you to know that you're not alone in this. You'll never be alone again. That's when I started crying. Really crying, the kind of sobbing that comes from somewhere deep and broken inside. Because in less than 24 hours, I'd be gone. Vanished. Erased from his life like I'd never existed. And he'd hate me with a fury I couldn't even imagine. And I'd have to raise our child alone, knowing I'd destroyed the only man I'd ever loved. Knowing our child would grow up without a father because I'd put him in prison. Hey, hey. He gathered me into his arms, rocking me gently. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Together. I promise you, Sarah, we'll make this work. I know this is scary, but you're not alone. Together. What a beautiful, terrible lie. We'd never be together. In a few hours, together would be nothing but a memory. I requested an emergency meeting with Marco that afternoon. Told Dante I needed to pick up some things from my apartment, that I'd be back soon. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. We met in the same coffee shop where this nightmare had begun, and I told him everything. The pregnancy. The impossible situation. The fact that I wouldn't, leave Dante without telling him the truth. Absolutely not, Marco said flatly, his coffee cup freezing halfway to his mouth. You tell him nothing. You extract tonight, and we'll set you up with a new identity. New city, new life. The baby complicates things, but we can handle it. Medical care, financial support, everything. The baby is a human being, I snapped, my voice rising enough that a couple at the next table glanced over. I lowered it to a harsh whisper. Dante is human being. A child who deserves to know their father. He has a right to know he's going to be a parent. He has a right to prison. That's all. Marco's face was hard, uncompromising. He's a murderer, Sarah. He orders kills. He runs drugs and guns and God knows what else. You think he deserves to know about this baby? You think he deserves anything except a life sentence? Marco. No. He leaned forward, his voice intense. Listen to me. You're not thinking clearly. You're compromised. You've been compromised from the start, and now you're pregnant with his kid and you've completely lost perspective. This man is dangerous. He's killed people. And you want to tell him you're carrying his baby? What do you think happens then? You think he just lets you walk away? I think he deserves the truth. The truth? Marco laughed bitterly. Since when do criminals deserve the truth? You were undercover. You did your job until you didn't. But this ends tonight. This conversation is over. Extraction is tonight at 11. Be ready. And Sarah? His eyes were cold. If you tell him anything, you're on your own. No backup. No support. No new identity. You'll be a federal agent who blew her cover to warn a criminal. Think about that. But I wasn't ready. Would never be ready. Not for this. Not for any of it. I went back to Dante's penthouse one last time. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold and amber, and I knew this was the last time I'd see this view. The last time I'd be in this space that had somehow become more home than anywhere I'd ever lived. He was in his office, working late, papers spread across his desk, and when he saw me standing in the doorway, his whole face softened. The hard edges he showed the world melted away. You should be resting. Did you eat? I was about to order dinner. What are you in the mood for? I need to tell you something. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Something in my tone made him stand, made the softness leave his face. Sarah, what is it? Is something wrong with the baby? Did something happen while you were out? This was it. The moment that would end everything. The moment I'd been dreading and delaying and knowing was inevitable. I took a breath and let the words destroy us both. My name isn't Sarah Chin. I mean, it is Sarah Chin, but I'm not a financial consultant. I'm FBI. Special Agent Sarah Chin. I was assigned to infiltrate your organization 6 months ago, gather evidence, and build a RICO case against you. Everything, meeting you, working for you, all of it, was an operation. A mission. I'm supposed to extract tonight at 11. The silence that followed was suffocating. The kind of silence that happens right before something breaks beyond repair. Dante stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Like I was a ghost. A stranger. Something that couldn't possibly be real, couldn't possibly be standing in his office saying these impossible words. His face went completely blank, every emotion wiped away like someone had hit a reset button. What did you just say? I'm FBI, I whispered, and saying it again made it more real, made the devastation in his eyes cut deeper. I've been undercover this whole time. From the moment we met. His expression didn't change. Didn't crack. He just looked at me with those dark eyes, and I watched something die in them. Trust. Hope. Whatever fragile, precious thing had been growing between us. I watched it wither and die right there, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Worse than anything. How long? His voice was ice. Permafrost. How long have you been lying to me? 6 months. From the beginning. From the beginning. He repeated it like he was testing the words, like he was trying to make them make sense and failing. So when you kissed me that first time, at Alejandro's party, on the terrace. No. I moved toward him, desperate, needing him to understand at least this one thing. Dante, that was real. Everything between us was real. I wasn't supposed to, I broke every rule in the book, I compromised the entire operation because Because you what? He backed away from me like I was poison, like my touch might contaminate him. Because you felt sorry for me? Because seducing me was part of the job? Part of the mission plan? Was sleeping with me in the operational guidelines? Because I fell in love with you. The words ripped out of me, raw and desperate and true. I fell in love with you, and I don't know how to make this right, but I needed you to know the truth before I disappeared. You deserve the truth. You deserve to know about the baby, about everything. He laughed, but it was hollow. Empty. The laugh of a man who just realized he'd been played for a fool. The truth. That's rich, coming from you. 6 months of lies, 6 months of pretending, 6 months of gathering evidence to put me away for life, and now you want to talk about truth? I know I have no right. You're damn right you have no right. He was shouting now, something I'd never heard him do. His control was fracturing, splintering, and watching it happen was like watching an execution. I trusted you. I told you things I've never told anyone. About my father, about the weight of running this family, about how tired I am of being this person. I let you in, Sarah. I let you see me. And this whole time you were, he stopped, ran a hand through his hair, turned away from me. God, I'm such an idiot. Such a complete idiot. You're not. Dante, please. Get out. What? Get out. Each word was a bullet, precise and fatal. You said you're supposed to extract tonight? Then go. Do your job. Mission accomplished, right? You got what you came for. I don't ever want to see you again. I'm pregnant, I said desperately, throwing the words out like a lifeline, like they could bridge the chasm opening between us. With your child. Doesn't that mean anything? He went completely still. For a long moment, he just looked at me, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. Rage. Betrayal. Love. Longing. Pain. So much pain. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was barely above a whisper, which somehow hurt more than the shouting. Is that even true? Or is that another lie to manipulate me? To make me let my guard down? Is that your next play, Agent Chin? The fact that he had to ask broke something fundamental inside me. The fact that I'd destroyed his trust so completely that he couldn't even believe this. It's true. I wouldn't lie about that. I would never lie about that. But you'd lie about everything else. He turned away, bracing his hands on his desk like it was the only thing keeping him upright. You'd lie about who you are. What you want. What you feel. You'd lie every single day for 6 months. So forgive me if I don't know what to believe anymore. Dante. I need you to leave. Now. He stopped himself, his shoulders rigid. Just leave, Sarah. Or Agent Chin. Or whoever the hell you are. I don't even know anymore. I wanted to fight. Wanted to scream that I was both people, that Sarah and Agent Chin had been at war inside me from the start, and Sarah had won. That the woman who fell in love with him was real, even if everything else was a lie. But what good would it do? I'd destroyed us. Destroyed him. Destroyed any chance we might have had. And now I had to live with that. I left his penthouse and didn't look back. Couldn't. If I looked back, I'd never leave. The extraction happened at midnight. Marco drove me to a safe house 3 hours away, and I sat in the passenger seat, numb and silent, watching the city lights fade in the rearview mirror. Watching everything I'd ever wanted disappear behind me. I wondered how I'd become the villain in my own story. How I'd set out to be a hero and ended up here. You did the right thing, Marco said, his voice softer now. Almost kind. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did. Did I? The question was genuine. I honestly didn't know anymore. He's a criminal, Sarah. You couldn't stay with him. You couldn't raise a child in that world. Around that violence, that danger. You did what you had to do. But Dante wasn't just a criminal. He was the man who brought me coffee exactly how I liked it without me ever telling him. Who listened when I talked about my childhood and foster care like it mattered, like I mattered. Who looked at me like I was something rare and worth protecting. Who held me while I cried and promised I'd never be alone. He was also the man who'd looked at me tonight like I'd ripped his heart out and crushed it in front of him. Because I had. 3 days passed in a blur of gray walls and unanswered questions. Then a week. Each day bled into the next, indistinguishable and heavy. The FBI debriefed me in a sterile conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and disappointment. They sat across from me, Marco and 2 agents I'd never met, asking the same questions over and over, their faces impassive as I recounted every detail of my catastrophic failure. When I got to the part about the pregnancy, the female agent's expression shifted from professional neutrality to something that might have been pity. They put me on administrative leave pending investigation into my inappropriate conduct. The words felt clinical, sanitized. They didn't capture the magnitude of what I'd done. Didn't capture the way I'd burned my career to the ground, how I'd violated every oath I'd taken, every principle I'd claimed to believe in. I spent my days in the safe house, a squat, forgettable ranch in a town I didn't know the name of, staring at beige walls that seemed to close in a little more each day. I felt our baby grow inside me, the subtle changes happening in my body a constant reminder of what I'd lost. Of what I'd destroyed. I tried not to think about Dante's face when I'd told him the truth, but it was there every time I closed my eyes. That look of devastation. Of betrayal so complete it had physically staggered him. The nausea came in waves now, though I couldn't tell if it was morning sickness or guilt. Probably both. On the 8th day, someone knocked on the door. The sound was so unexpected, so out of place in the oppressive silence I'd been living in, that at first I thought I'd imagined it. But then it came again, 3 sharp raps that seemed to echo through the entire house. I wasn't expecting visitors. No one was supposed to know I was here. Marco had been crystal clear about that, no contact with anyone until the investigation concluded. No phone calls. No emails. No visitors. Complete isolation until they decided what to do with me. My heart hammered as I grabbed the gun I kept in the nightstand, old habits from my training, and approached the door carefully, keeping to the side, out of the line of fire if someone decided to shoot through the wood. Who is it? It's me. Dante's voice. Here. At my safe house in the middle of nowhere. At a location that was supposed to be classified, buried under layers of federal security protocols. My breath caught. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the gun. I threw open the door with more force than necessary, and there he was, standing on my doorstep like an apparition. He was wearing dark jeans and a black leather jacket I'd never seen before, looking exhausted and furious and heartbreakingly beautiful. His eyes were shadowed, bloodshot, and there was stubble covering his jaw, evidence of sleepless nights that mirrored my own. How did you? I started, my voice a mixture of shock and something dangerously close to hope. I have resources, he said flatly, his voice devoid of emotion. Can I come in? I stepped aside, still clutching the gun, and he walked past me into the small living room with its cheap furniture and blank walls. The space felt even smaller with him in it, his presence filling every corner. For a minute, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched taut between us like a wire about to snap. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the sound of my own breathing. Then, you look tired, he said, his back still to me as he surveyed the room. I haven't been sleeping. I set the gun down on the side table, my hands still trembling. Neither have I. He turned to face me, and the full weight of his gaze nearly knocked me over. I've spent the last week trying to hate you. Trying to convince myself that everything between us was a lie, an act, a performance. That you played me perfectly, manipulated me like the criminal I am, and I was stupid enough to fall for it. Weak enough. My throat tightened painfully. Dante. Let me finish. His voice was rough, raw with emotion he was struggling to contain. Please. I need to say this. I nodded, pressing my lips together to keep from interrupting. I've gone over every conversation we ever had, he continued, beginning to pace like a caged animal. Every moment, every look, every time you smiled at me. Every time you touched me. Every time you looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. And you know what I realized? He stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto mine with laser focus. You're a terrible liar, Sarah. I blinked, confused. What? You heard me. For an FBI agent, you're remarkably bad at deception, at least, the kind that matters. He stepped closer, and I could smell him now, that familiar scent that made my chest ache. When you're lying, you do this thing with your hands, you clasp them together, fingers interlaced, like you're physically holding yourself back from the truth. Like you're restraining yourself. You did it all the time when you were pretending to be just my consultant. When we'd discuss business in meetings, when you'd give me reports. Your hands were always clasped. I looked down at my hands, hanging loose at my sides now, and realized he was right. I'd never noticed it before. But when we were alone, his voice softened, became almost tender. When you kissed me, when you told me about your childhood in foster care, when you looked at me like I was someone worth loving instead of a monster worth prosecuting? Your hands were always open. He reached out and took one of my hands in his, uncurling my fingers gently. Relaxed. Real. You weren't lying then, Sarah. You couldn't have been. I know the difference now. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unstoppable. I wasn't. I swear on everything, I wasn't lying about us. About what I felt. What I feel. I know. His hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that destroyed me. His thumb brushed away my tears. And that's why I'm here. Because I'm insane. Because you betrayed me, lied to me about who you were, tried to destroy everything I've built, everything my family has built. And his voice cracked, and I saw the sheen of tears in his own eyes. I still love you. God help me, Sarah, I still love you. I spent 8 days trying to stop, and I can't. I can't stop loving you. I love you too, I whispered, my voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. For the lies, for the betrayal, I know. He kissed me then, soft and broken and desperate and absolutely perfect, and it felt like coming home after a war. Like finding water in a desert. Like breathing after drowning. I know, Tesoro. I know. We stood there in that forgettable living room, holding each other like lifelines, and for a moment, the world outside didn't exist. The FBI. His family. The lies. The case. None of it mattered. There was just us, just the feeling of his arms around me and his heart beating against mine. But then reality crashed back in, cold and unforgiving. It always did. We can't do this, I said against his chest, the words physically painful to speak. Your family will never accept me, I'm the woman who tried to put you in prison. The FBI will never forgive me for compromising the operation, for falling in love with you. My career is over, Dante. And we're on opposite sides of a war that's never going to end. There's no future here. No matter how much we want there to be. Then I'm changing sides. I pulled back so fast I nearly stumbled. What? His expression was serious. Determined. The look he got when he'd made a decision and nothing would sway him. I've spent my whole life in this world because I didn't know any other way. Because it's what my father wanted, what he built, what my family expected me to carry on. The legacy. The empire. But I'm done, Sarah. I'm done pretending I don't hate what I've become. I'm done sacrificing everything, my conscience, my soul, any chance at a normal life, for an empire built on violence and blood money. Dante, you can't just, I started, my mind reeling. I can. I've already thought this through. I'm going to make a deal with the FBI. He said it calmly, like he was discussing a business merger instead of burning his entire life to the ground. I'll give them everything they want, names, locations, operations, financial records, everything. I'll testify against my own family if that's what it takes. My uncle. My cousins. Everyone. In exchange, witness protection. New identities. A new life, clean and far away from all of this. For both of us. For our child. My heart stopped. The room spun. You'd betray your entire family? Everyone you've ever known? For me? You're my family now. His hand moved to my stomach, still flat but holding our entire future inside it. The gesture was so tender, so protective, that I nearly broke down completely. You and this baby. That's what matters. That's the only thing that matters anymore. I don't care about the business. I don't care about the Castellano name or the legacy or any of it. I just want a life where I can wake up next to you without blood on my hands. Where our child can grow up safe and normal and never know what their father used to be. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it physically hurt. Wanted to believe we could just walk away from everything, the FBI, his family, the violence, the lies, and start over somewhere new. Become different people. Build something clean and good from the ashes of who we used to be. But I knew his world. I'd spent 6 months studying it, infiltrating it, documenting every brutal detail. I knew what happened to people who betrayed the Castellano family. I'd seen the crime scene photos, read the autopsy reports. They'll kill you, Dante. Your uncle, your cousins, everyone, they won't let you just walk away. You know too much. You've seen too much. And testifying against them? I shook my head, fear clawing at my throat. That's a death sentence. They'll hunt you down no matter where witness protection puts you. They have connections everywhere. Resources. Money. Time. Then I'll die protecting you. His voice was steel. Absolute. But I won't lose you again. I can't, Sarah. These last 8 days have been hell. Worse than hell. Knowing you're out here somewhere, carrying my child, and I can't be with you. Can't protect you. Can't fix what's broken between us. His forehead pressed against mine, and I could feel him shaking. I can't lose you again. I won't survive it. The next 6 months were the hardest of my life. Harder than foster care. Harder than the academy. Harder than any undercover operation I'd ever worked. Dante met with federal prosecutors in a series of marathon sessions that sometimes lasted 12, 14 hours at a time. I wasn't allowed in the room, conflict of interest, they said, but I'd wait outside in sterile hallways, drinking bad coffee and watching lawyers file in and out with briefcases full of evidence. He cut a deal that made headlines in the bureau. Full immunity in exchange for testimony that would dismantle the entire Castellano organization from the inside out. Names, dates, locations, bank accounts, everything. The kind of comprehensive cooperation that prosecutors dream about but rarely get. His uncle Marco Castellano, the man who'd taught Dante the business, who'd been like a second father after his own died, put a hit out on him within 48 hours of the deal being made public. $500,000 for Dante's head. The news came through official channels, intercepted communications that made my blood run cold. Marco had called Dante a traitor in a wiretapped conversation. Said he'd die screaming. We went into protective custody immediately. The U.S. Marshals moved us between safe houses every few weeks, sometimes every few days if there was a credible threat. We lived like ghosts, like people who'd been erased from the world. No social media. No contact with anyone from our past lives. New phones every month. I couldn't even call my old partner at the bureau, couldn't let anyone know I was okay. Each safe house was the same, nondescript, forgettable, located in suburbs where no one looked twice at a young couple keeping to themselves. Beige walls. Cheap furniture. Windows we couldn't stand near for too long. Dante would do sweeps of the perimeter every morning and evening, old habits dying hard. I'd watch him from the window, my hand on my growing belly, and wonder if we'd ever stop looking over our shoulders. But we were together. And slowly, impossibly, we built something real out of the wreckage. We'd sit up late into the night, talking about the life we wanted to build. The kind of parents we wanted to be. Dante would put his hand on my stomach and tell our baby stories about his mother, the good parts of his childhood, before everything got complicated. I'd tell him about the family I'd always dreamed of having, the one I'd never had growing up in the system. "I want our kid to be bored," he said one night, lying beside me in the dark. Like, wonderfully, safely bored. Worried about homework and soccer practice. Not about whether their father's going to come home. "They will be," I promised. "We're going to give them the most boringly normal life possible." He laughed, but there was relief in it. Hope. Dante testified in front of a grand jury when I was 7 months pregnant, so big I could barely see my feet. The marshals didn't want me there, too dangerous, too visible, but I insisted. Marco had to escort me himself, in an armored vehicle with 3 other agents, all of them armed to the teeth and constantly scanning for threats. I watched from behind bulletproof glass in a secure room as Dante systematically destroyed everything his family had built over 3 generations. Watched him name names, detail crimes going back a decade, burn every bridge he'd ever had. His voice was steady, clinical, as he described murders, money laundering operations, drug trafficking routes. He didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate. Just methodically dismantled his entire former life. The prosecutors looked like they'd won the lottery. The defense attorneys, representing various members of the Castellano family, looked like they wanted to kill him themselves. And when it was over, when he walked out of that courthouse knowing he could never go back, knowing he'd just signed the death warrant for any chance of reconciliation with his family, he looked at me with exhausted eyes and smiled. Really smiled, for the first time in weeks. "We're free," he said, taking my hand. We weren't. Not really. Not in any meaningful sense. But I understood what he meant. The U.S. Marshals gave us new identities a week later, in a process that felt surreal and final. David and Sarah Martinez, a young couple relocating to Portland for David's job in tech consulting. They gave us full backgrounds, social security numbers, employment histories, college transcripts that had never existed. Taught us our new cover stories, made us memorize every detail until we could recite them in our sleep. "You are David Martinez now," the marshal told Dante. "Dante Castellano is dead. You need to think like David. React like David. Be David every second of every day. One slip, one moment where you respond to your old name, and you're compromised." Dante, David, nodded. "I understand. We'd never be completely safe. There would always be someone looking for Dante Castellano, someone with a grudge or a bounty to collect. But we had each other. And we had hope. That had to be enough. Our daughter was born on a rainy April morning in a Portland hospital under our new names. The labor was long, 16 hours of it, and Dante never left my side. He held my hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement in Italian when I was too exhausted to push anymore, looked at me like I was the strongest person he'd ever seen. When she finally came, slippery and screaming and impossibly tiny, the nurse placed her on my chest and the world stopped. She had Dante's dark eyes, already alert, already curious, and my stubborn chin, which I knew would give us trouble someday. And when he held her for the first time, standing by the window with rain pattering against the glass, I watched him transform. Watch the dangerous man I'd fallen in love with, the one who'd killed people and ordered hits and run a criminal empire, become someone softer. Someone new. Someone who looked at this tiny human being like she was the only thing in the universe that mattered. "She's perfect," he whispered, tears streaming down his face unchecked. His hands trembled as he cradled her. "She's absolutely perfect. I can't believe, I don't deserve." "You do," I interrupted, my own voice thick with emotion. "You deserve this. You deserve her." "She is," I agreed, watching them together. "My family." Against all odds, against every logical prediction, here was my family. He looked up at me, and in his eyes, I saw everything we'd survived. The lies. The betrayal. The fear. The running. Everything we'd sacrificed to get to this moment. "Thank you, Sarah. For the truth. For giving me a way out when I didn't even know I wanted one. For loving me when I didn't deserve it, when I was still waist deep in that life." "You deserve it," I said firmly. "You deserve all of it. The second chance. The fresh start. Her." And maybe that was the real truth we'd both learned. That people aren't just one thing. That humans are complicated and contradictory and capable of change. That the man who'd ordered hits and run criminal operations could also be the man who held his daughter like she was made of starlight and promises. That the FBI agent who'd lied for 6 months could also be the woman who'd risked everything, her career, her safety, her entire identity, for love. We named her Elena, after Dante's mother. It was the only piece of his old life we kept, and I could see what it meant to him. A bridge between who he'd been and who he was becoming. And as I watched him rock her to sleep that first night in our tiny Portland apartment, a 2-bedroom with a view of parking lots and rain-soaked streets, humming an Italian lullaby I didn't know but somehow felt in my bones, I realized something profound. We'd both spent our lives pretending to be people we weren't. Playing roles. Following scripts written by other people. Following rules handed down from institutions and families and expectations. I'd been Agent Chin, the ambitious FBI agent with something to prove. He'd been Dante Castellano, heir to a criminal empire he'd never asked for. But now, finally, we were just us. David and Sarah Martinez. A couple with a complicated past and an uncertain future. A couple who'd destroyed everything they'd ever known to build something true and honest and theirs. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that night in October when Dante first kissed me on his terrace. The engagement party. The October air sharp and clean. How I'd pulled away after, terrified of what it meant, terrified of the feelings already taking root inside me. If I could go back, if I could whisper something to that version of myself, I'd tell her not to be afraid. That love, real, complicated, messy love, is worth betraying your family for. Worth betraying yourself for. Worth risking everything you've ever known, everything you thought defined you. Because in the end, the only person I truly betrayed was Agent Chin. The woman who thought she could keep her heart locked away forever. The woman who believed duty and rules were more important than feeling alive. The woman who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable. And honestly, I'm glad she's gone. I mourned her for a while, mourned the career and the certainty and the clear sense of right and wrong. But I don't miss her anymore. This life with Dante, with David, this messy, complicated, beautiful life where we check the locks twice before bed and sometimes wake up from nightmares about the past catching up with us, is the only truth I need. Him humming lullabies to our daughter. Making breakfast in our cramped kitchen. Planning a future that exists beyond fear. We're not free. We'll probably never be completely free. But we're alive. We're together. And we chose this. That's more than most people ever get.